For 14 years, I've been mispronouncing the name of one of the internet's most popular services. All the way back in high school, I was calling it omegle, and only today am I realizing that it's actually pronounced omegle. So I learned the proper pronunciation just in time to say goodbye to it, because after operating for 14 years, omegle is getting shut down. They're taking it out behind the barn, God rest its soul. And it's leaving behind a weird legacy. I don't care who you are or what your history is in the cyberspace, the fact that you're on the World Wide Web right now tells me that you've at least heard of omegle, because it was an absolute juggernaut when it comes to internet culture. So many YouTubers had their start from trolling on omegle. Some YouTubers, even up until yesterday before the announcement, were still making their bread and butter content on omegle. It was a service that was used by so many people so frequently. Basically what it was a service that would match you with a total stranger and you two could video chat together or text chat with each other. I personally never really used it outside of one time for a video I made a decade ago. I didn't use the video chat functionality because I wasn't trying to get traumatized. Even back then, a decade ago, omegle had the reputation of, if you go on the video chat, you're just going to see some penis. Like, everyone was going to be flopping their meat out of nowhere like a jump scare. It was never a matter of if you run into a creepy degenerate, it was only a matter of when. It was kind of an inevitability. If you're video chatting with strangers on omegle, you were bound to run into someone on the sex offenders registry face to face. And it's something the platform faced heavy scrutiny for since the very beginning. And if you've seen the response from people with the announcement that it's shutting down, you're probably seeing a lot of the same things. Pedophiles just fell to their knees across the globe. This is the worst news sexual predators have seen since Reddit banned jailbait. Things of that nature. And it's something that the creator also recognizes, and it is something that clearly did play a role in the demise of omegle. So I want to go through the situation here of what led to it being shut down. If you go on the site right now, you will see a very long message from the creator of omegle. His name is Leaf Brooks, and he tells the story of the genesis of the platform, the motivation behind making it, what it was like to run it, and a lot of the problems that he faced and what actually led to the current situation where it's being taken down. Now, to try and sum up why he created omegle, basically he wanted it to be a way of connecting people with each other. From the comfort of their own home, maybe make a meaningful connection. He said if the internet's like a global village, then he wanted omegle to be the way of strolling down the street and meeting people, fundamentally. So it was meant to be a tool where you could just strike up conversations with random people that you get connected with through omegle. He then goes over some of the problems that arose from this platform. He said, unfortunately, there are also lowlights. Virtually every tool can be used for good or for evil, and that is especially true of communication tools due to their innate flexibility. The telephone can be used to wish your grandmother happy birthday, but it can also be used to call in a bomb threat. There can be no honest accounting of omegle without acknowledging that some people misused it, including to commit unspeakably heinous crimes. He then talks about some of the moderation tools they offered, including state-of-the-art AI to combat it, and then says that the anonymity behind the tool, it helped create a layer of separation from, bad actors and victims, and basically says that he's proud of what they were able to achieve with their moderation. He then talks about a positive impact that it had on the site, claiming that omegle worked with law enforcement agencies and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to help put evildoers in prison where they belong. There are people rotting behind bars right now, thanks in part to evidence that omegle proactively collected against them and tipped the authorities off too. But then says, all that said, the fight against crime isn't one that can be truly won. It's a never-ending battle that must be fought and refought every day, and even if you do the very best job it is possible for you to do, you may make a sizable dent, but you won't win in any absolute sense of the word. So he is talking about how he believes they did as much as they possibly could to combat some of the evil people using their platform for horrible reasons. And now we get into the meat and potatoes of why omegle's in its current state. He believes that it's because society is placing unrealistic expectations of him and the service to prevent crime entirely on there. He says it can be inferred from their act of setting standards that are not humanly achievable. Omegle is the direct target of these attacks. Their ultimate victim is you. When they say omegle shouldn't exist, they are really saying that you shouldn't be allowed to use it, that you shouldn't be allowed to meet random new people online. That idea is an anathema to the ideals I cherish, specifically to the bedrock principle of a free society that when restrictions are imposed to prevent crime, the burden of those restrictions must not be targeted at innocent victims or potential victims of crime. So to kind of break it down, he talks about how because there has been a history of misuse, people want omegle to do more to stop it, to the point that he believes it's not possible. And ultimately, he concludes by saying that it's no longer financially or psychologically sustainable to keep omegle going, and that they've lost this fight. To put in perspective where he's coming from, they recently just concluded a lawsuit where they were accused of pairing an 11-year-old with a sexual predator. And this is far from the only example of this kind of thing happening on the site. It has been an issue they've dealt with since the very beginning, since the fucking dinosaurs were walking around on omegle. And according to the firm representing the girl in that 2021 lawsuit which just finished, she is claiming that the shutdown here is a result of the mediation from this case. I find this situation extremely interesting, actually. He's not wrong. There is a lot of legislation that does try and get passed under the guise of protecting the interests of the public with things like SOPA or COPPA, if you remember that. And in doing that and proposing these things, it takes away a lot of people's freedoms when it comes to like the internet in general. I'm sure most of you remember those, and now it's become so frequent, like once a year they're trying to pass bills like that now, and it's like the fucking box ghost from Danny Phantom poking its goofy little head out once a year. Just this menace that the internet has to collectively come out and spit on and tell them, scram, get out of here. But anyway, he's also not wrong in the fact that this isn't a problem that's exclusive to omegle. This is something all social media or communications tools face, evil people misusing it. Twitter has entire communities of pedophiles that openly operate in broad daylight. YouTube had entire rabbit holes of sexual predators that would go out of their way to find potential victims on the site. However, what he doesn't recognize is omegle is still different than both of these. Omegle is the only one that would directly connect a child with a predator. Now, of course, it wasn't doing it on purpose maliciously. I don't think there was anything embedded in the code, the algorithm, to connect children with sex offenders, but because it would randomly connect strangers, this kind of thing happened a lot. And that is a problem that's exclusive to omegle. You won't find that anywhere else, like on Twitter. Oh, hey, Junior, howdy. What's going on, sport? Look, we noticed you were following Roblox. Well, why don't you follow this guy? His name's Jeffrey Dahmer. He's a bit of an interesting fellow. You guys might have some things in common. Why don't we connect you two and, put you in contact? Maybe you guys really hit it off or something. Like, that's not something that happens anywhere besides on omegle. To go off of his example where he said a phone can be used to call your grandmother to tell her happy birthday, but it can also be used to call in a bomb threat, let's dive a little deeper in there. If omegle is a phone, it is a phone that is programmed to either call Mr. Rogers or the boogeyman, and you have no way of knowing who's going to be dialed. It's just an inherently more dangerous tool no matter how you spin it. Now, I do fully agree that a lot of the responsibility on what children do online falls on their parents, and the absence of parents in these days, where they just don't monitor what their kids do online. Parents are taking a much more passive role in the raising of their kids and just leaving it on the internet to do it. They put the onus of raising their children on the fucking internet, and it's tragic. But at the very core here, to the meatballs in this spaghetti, there is a problem if your tool keeps putting kids with sexual predators or keeps getting used for child pornography related crimes. There is an issue there, and there's nothing wrong with pointing that out and hoping that there's more you can do. This doesn't really seem like a situation where like the government's stepping in to censor them or anything and take away freedoms. It's victims coming forward to point out a very clear problem with the service if kids keep getting preyed upon there. Now, of course, I do agree that you can't stop every criminal on every platform all the time, but you can at least take steps to mitigate that to the best of your ability. Like, I think step one should have been preventing children from even accessing omegle in the first place. This should have been an adult-only site from the start. Now, maybe it's supposed to be and kids circumvent that somehow. I'm not entirely sure because, again, I'm pretty unfamiliar with the site. But when I look it up, it says that it's 18 unsupervised, but 13 with parental permission. Like, this isn't Neopets. Like, 13-year-olds shouldn't be able to get parental permission to use your site that is being used by very sketchy, evil adults, too, right? Like, it's not... this isn't an attack on freedom here. This is an attack specifically on Omegle having a clear flaw that keeps having children be victims of sexual predators. But there is another thing I do agree with him on that has nothing to do with that. At the end of his statement, he mentions this, that he believes that the way the internet is trending is kind of following a souped-up TV model that focuses primarily on passive consumption. And he is on the money with that. It's something I've talked about too. The way the internet's going is that it wants to shove as much content in your face as frequently as possible, and it's all algorithmically driven to keep you hooked on that platform, to just keep you glued there through basically just junk food, empty calorie content. That's across the board: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all of it. All of it wants to just keep you mindlessly scrolling, TikTok being the biggest example. And especially since everyone's attention span is so fucking rotted and cooked, things like Subway surfers being glued on the bottom of every video with soap cutting in the top right because no one can focus anymore, all of it seems to be trending towards just have people be mindless zombies just consuming content endlessly. But yeah, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked now. Overall, I do understand why Omegle would be getting shut down. It is still a pretty interesting thing to see actually happen since it's been operating for 14 years. I didn't expect this. I don't think anyone really did. So, I mean, yeah, that's really about it. So, yeah.